Hi, this is Philip Cotro with depthsofpentecost.com, teachings that bring you deeper into the Word of God. This is part 12 of our series on why the New Testament was written, and this week we're going to be talking about why Paul wrote Titus. Go back a few weeks to a previous lesson. After Paul was released from his 2 years of house arrest at Rome, he immediately went to Philippi after that, which is where he wrote 1 Timothy. It wasn't last week's lesson that we talked about that, it was the week before. On his way there, he had stopped at the island of Crete, which was a large island out in the Mediterranean, somewhere halfway between Greece and the coast of Asia Minor. I say was, but it's still there today. The church was already there, and it's unclear when exactly it was planted and by whom. The New Testament doesn't really say. We don't have a lot of information about when the church at the island of Crete was planted, nor where it was located. There were about 40 cities on the island at the time, and we don't actually know which one the church was located in. In all likelihood, it was probably the capital city, which was called Gortyn. Paul comes here and he doesn't arrive alone. As he sailed to the island immediately after the house arrest, he brought Titus with him. Titus was a loyal apostle for a very long time. They had gone way back to the very beginning of Paul's ministry. Titus was from Antioch, and he was actually the brother of Luke. He first met Paul in his early days of ministry, and he had accompanied Paul on his third apostolic journey, which is when he traveled to Ephesus for the first time. In fact, when Paul wrote the letters to Corinth, 1st, 2nd Corinthians, as well as the 2 books that are missing, Titus had been the messenger that had carried the books to the city. So sometime in the year 63 AD, which is the year that Paul was released from his 2-year house arrest at Rome, he travels to the island of Crete and he brings Titus with him, and he appoints Titus over that church. Then he left. The assignment that Titus was given was to appoint elders over the church. And it's made clear that this was a temporary assignment. So Titus wasn't supposed to be staying here permanently. It was just a temporary thing for him to stay there. And the job was to establish certain people over the church who would sort of save the same purpose, I suppose you could say, with Moses when he had to appoint 70 elders by God to sort of help bear the burden of the people. So fast forward another 2 years. Paul is in Ephesus at the time. He's written to the church in Ephesus, 1 Timothy. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. There's been a great fire in Rome. The book of Hebrews has been written. We talked about that last week. The Neronic persecutions have begun. Now, at this particular moment in time, Paul is currently in Macedonia. And Apollos has met him there, and he gets word from Titus about the state of the church at Crete, and it's not good news. The same heresy that we talked about in the 1 Timothy video, which was a very early form of Gnosticism, what people assume was probably the beginning of the Gnostic doctrine. It started in Ephesus, and Timothy was trying to combat it, and it was starting to spread, and now it had reached the church at Crete. And just like it had done at Ephesus, it was wreaking havoc on that church. Now, the Cretans were already easily influenced by that kind of doctrine because as a people, they were known at the time for gluttony and drunkenness. And so you have this culture that surrounds the Christian church that easily influences the Christian church. And, Christians in the ancient world are often have a lot of pressure on them by the local populations to partake in parties and drunkenness and sinful activity. There's also a rebellion against local authorities that is beginning to arrive at the church in Crete. Now, you got to remember the time and place. We're living during the Roman persecution, the first one against the Christians, when Nero is committing these great sadistic atrocities against the Christians. He's blaming them for the fire of Rome. Alcoholism is also a big problem at the Church of Crete. So, in AD 65, Paul writes a letter to Titus to address all of these problems. It is his second pastoral letter. Titus has not selected the elders yet. So, Paul is basically giving him instructions on how to do that, pragmatic directions on how to select this group of elders that he was supposed to select. The second issue is how to silence those who are spreading the false heresy that is in the church, which is the same thing that Paul had written to Timothy in 1 Timothy. It's a very short letter, and Paul concludes it by saying that he needs Titus in what's called Nicopolis because he has plans of starting a church there. So what Paul wants to do is he wants to replace Titus as the leader of the church in Crete, and after the elders have been appointed, and then take him and the two of them together can plant a church in Nicopolis. And he concludes the letter by telling Titus that he'll replace him with either two men that he's selected for the job, either Tychicus or Artemis. The letter is sent by Apollos, and it asks Paul also asks Titus to take care of Apollos when he arrives and give him anything that he needs. So after the letter, Paul will take Titus out of Crete, and they will go to the Nicopolis to plant the church that Paul plans there. They will attempt to go to Ephesus after that, but unfortunately will not be successful. The Roman persecution is well underway, and it will get in the way of their plans. The Roman persecution will also set the stage for the rest of the New Testament, so from here to the rest of the classes. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Feel free to leave a comment. You can subscribe. I put new videos up every Tuesday. You can also check out my weekly blog at depthsofpentecost.com. I'll leave a link in the descriptions below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.